Trucker Dump for May 25th, 2015, episode 108. 4 reasons truckers get the Hazmat Endorsement.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by abouttruckdriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
What's happening, hot stuff?
Okay. I know at least one person out there has to have thought that was going to happen again. I mean, I did play it a lot in the last episode, and I laughed every time, so why wouldn't I do it again? Well, you'll be happy to know we don't hear from Long Duck in this episode, so that will probably be the last time you hear of it. Although I may surprise you. You know the way it works. Hey, what's up with you guys? Me? I'm sitting at a truck stop, of course, obviously, because that's where I live my life, it seems like. I'm doing a 34-hour break, which, by the way, would not be possible on the old rules, so thankfully I saw a story about this recently, and possibly they're going to be getting rid of this thing. We're one step closer to getting rid of this stupid 34-hour rule, the old 34-hour rule with the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. thing, which is good because, like I said, this one wouldn't have counted on the old rules. So I hope that, goes the way of the dodo bird. I have to admit, I'm not all that pumped about recording today. It's pretty freaking hot. I'm sitting here without my shirt on, which, hey, if you're going to pray to a god, now would be a good time to thank him that this is not a video podcast. So, hey, yeah, that's to be thankful for at least. But, it is hot, so it just takes me so long to record these things when it's warm because my computer gets hot. I have to turn it off. I have to turn the fan on it, let it cool down for a while. So sometimes it turns into like a 2 or 3 minute recording session. Then I got to cool it off for 2 or 3 minutes, and it just takes forever. But, oh well, enough of my whining, I guess. Okay, what do we got going in today's show? Let's see. In the feedback section, we're going to hear from Greg, who, after much pain and suffering, finally sent in an audio comment, and he wants to talk about super truckers. Because, hey, we all like to talk about super truckers. Next up, we got a famous dead guy writes in. Yeah, he's a famous dead guy. He writes in about the driver complacency issue I mentioned back in episodes 97 and episode 104. And lastly, we'll go through an email exchange I had with a guy named Sam. I'm also going to do a couple of quick little stories that I found in the news, which, hey, this is kind of a new thing for me. I don't know if you'll like it or not. Let me know. Just a couple little brief comments, nothing major. Let's see, what else? Oh, yeah, I do have one bit of feedback from a guy named Andy that I want to go ahead and hit it right up front. Because this is something that I've been dealing with for quite a while. I think I've mentioned it on this before, but I wanted to make sure that you guys knew it and could possibly contribute. So Andy, he wrote in, he had an idea for a blog post. He wanted to write about GPS units and gave me the link to his website and everything. And I wrote him back, explained to him that I would be more than happy to have him write something about GPS units because, quite honestly, I don't use one because I'm just too freaking cheap to buy one. I just get by with Google Maps and a good old-fashioned paper atlas. Big old spiral-bound large print thing since I'm old and blind. But anyway, after writing him back and explaining to him that I would love to have this post, I also explained that this is now a podcast, and so I do require guest blog posters to submit their post in audio form. You can imagine what happened after that. I didn't hear another word. I don't know why people have such a fear of putting their voice on tape, whatever, digital. I just don't understand it now that I do it all the time, but hey, I guess I could when I first started out. It was kind of weird. But anyway, hey, I'm just out here to say that if you have something that you want to contribute to the show, please write something up and then read it for an audio comment even. It doesn't have to be a full post. It could just be a short audio clip like Greg sent in. We'll hear that later on. But, it could be a full post. My posts are about, 1,500 to 2,300 words, depending on how I'm feeling that day and how meticulous I'm being about my writing. If you ever write something up like that and you think that it might be something, that the podcast listeners would like to hear, then hey, send me an email. If you've got an idea for a post and you'd just like to contribute, maybe you've thought about doing a podcast yourself, and you just want to see, hey, wonder what this recording thing's like. Well, take a stab with me. Give it a shot. See what happens. Before we get to the news here, I do want to mention again the Trucker Country CD giveaway by Eric McMahon. He offered to give us 3 copies to give away, and I believe I'm going to do that on the next podcast, because quite honestly, I'm getting tired of talking about it all the time and nobody sending in trying to win the stinking things. I don't understand why. It's really good music. It's free. Hello. But as of the time of this recording, I have exactly 6 entries, which means 3 of you are going to be really unlucky, but the other 3 are going to be happy. So, hey, if you ever want to win a contest, this is the contest to get in on. All you have to do is send me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com. Send in the subject line of Trucker Music. Don't have to give me a physical address or anything right now. I'll take care of that once we figure out who the winners are. And if you don't know who Eric McMahon is, make sure you just Google him. You'll see videos, you'll see him on Facebook, you'll see his stuff in iTunes, and you can sample all of his music there and check it out. It's really catchy, and it's more catchy the more you listen to it. So I would advise getting your name in the bucket for this one. Now for that brief bit of news. Okay, first is a little bitty tiny one, which is that Pre-Pass is now accepted in Maine and Wyoming. I thought this was really cool. I would think it was even more cool if my company had Pre-Pass. Quite honestly, though, my company doesn't get hassled a lot by DOT, so I don't miss Pre-Pass that much, and I'm never in California anymore, which is where I would really miss it. But Wyoming is another one of those states where if I would love to have it, because I am in Wyoming every now and then, and as most of you know, Wyoming pulls you in almost every single time, and you have to pull in, take your paperwork in, and all that stuff, and go through all that rigmarole. Boy, if you could have Pre-Pass in Wyoming, that would be sweet. So, hey, look forward to it. If the next time you are in Wyoming, you're going to get that little beep, beep, beep from Pre-Pass that lets you just go on by. Lucky you. I'll be stopping and talking to the nice DOT officers. Okay, the next bit of news is, I'm sure you all have heard of this. It's been all over the trucking industry. We're talking about the Inspiration, the new truck from Freightliner, the self-driving truck. I read an article about this over on Truckers Report, and I put a link in the show notes, by the way, if you're interested in that, if you're the last person on Earth who hasn't heard of the Inspiration. But I had a couple of questions about it, and thankfully this article actually answered them, but it still doesn't make sense to me. My biggest question was, I wanted to know what it would actually do, and basically it uses cameras to keep you in between lanes. But, you can't use the autopilot mode. You can only use it on the highway, you can only use it during the daytime hours, and you can only use it in good weather. Which I guess is understandable for this is a first-gen product, so hey, you take what you can get. And, that's great. It might be kind of cool to drive. It might be kind of cool to tap the little button and, just let the thing drive for you. By the way, on that, in the link that I sent, there's also a little video kind of explaining how and showing how it works. The reporter rides along with the driver. So it's kind of cool. Check that out. But, the thing that I really had a question about was, what is the driver supposed to be doing all this time when the truck is driving itself? And I was thinking, what are they going to allow us to do? Well, come to find out, there aren't really any rules about this yet. So kind of the manufacturer of the vehicle makes up the rules, which seems kind of weird to me. But even weirder, they made some the stupid rule they make is that you cannot text on your phone. I guess you can talk. You can't text, which, hey, that's federal law, whatever. But you can use a tablet or a computer while going down the road. Now, I don't understand this. I just don't understand. Okay, I'm going to be way more involved in my computer. If I whip my computer out and I'm using it going down the road, I'm going to be way more involved in that than I am if I'm just texting, the evil overlord or something. For Pete's sake, I mean, how long would it take you to take your computer off your lap or wherever you got it? I don't know. Maybe it's going to be required to be an amount. This whole thing is just confusing right now, and I'm glad there's only one truck out there, because if there was a whole bunch of them all of a sudden, this would be a complete nightmare when it comes to legislation and what we can and can't do behind the wheel. I don't know. I hope they mash this all out, but, I'll probably be out of truck driving for good by the time they figure all this stuff out, and by the time fleets are actually ordering this truck. So, hey, what do you think about the new Inspiration from Freightliner? Would you drive it? Would you be the guy sitting behind the wheel trusting the thing? I don't know, the video looked pretty easy, but hey, we all have our trust issues, I guess. I would like to pipe in here and say, I got an email from a guy named Brian in Australia who told me to quit talking about all the noise because you guys can never hear it. I did just listen back to a little bit of what I just recorded, and I can hear kind of a fuzz in the background. It's just a truck idling outside. Maybe you can't hear it. I don't know. If you listen in headphones, you might be able to hear it. Maybe because of the truck noise, you can't hear it. I don't know. But Brian, I'm sorry for mentioning it again, but it just bugs the crap out of me. I will try to quit mentioning it in the future. I just feel like I need to, explain myself. I'm too much for a perfectionist, I guess. Well, okay. One last thing. I know most of you, many of you, don't listen all the way to the end of the podcasts that you listen to. Me, I almost always do for most of them. Most of the podcasts I listen all the way to the end because I like to hear the person do their sign off. Like I always say, drive safe and stay out of my way. And then my nephew pipes in with his little thing that he says, which some of you have not figured out what he says, I think, because he's partially deaf and he has a slight speech impediment, but I just thought it was so cute. Boy, he doesn't sound like that anymore. He's got a deep voice like this now. I'm going to have to get him to record the same words sometime, put him on the end. That'll be a little surprise for you people who listen all the way to the end. I do wish you would listen to the end, because that's where I explain what I want you to write in about. That's where I list how you can help the show, and I thank you for listening to the show and all that good stuff. And I always make that outro part, I always make that unique, so it's not just a stock thing that I just pop in there and then, you're not missing anything by doing it. It's nothing big that you're missing, but I produce the podcast. I wish you'd listen to the end. So anyway, having said all that, long-winded as I usually am, I wanted to go ahead and pipe in a few of these things right up here at the beginning that some of you guys just fast forward once the feedback section's over. I'm sure you just hit that button and, be done with the end of the podcast. But I wanted to mention a couple of things, like I'm always looking for suggestions and comments for the show. I want to know how to improve the show. I want to know what you like, what you don't like. Are they too long? Are they too short? I doubt too short is a problem, since most of you are probably drivers and got nothing better to do all day than listen to a podcast. Okay. Do you like me talking about apps that help truck drivers, or services that help truck drivers? Do you mind if I talk about little apps that I'm, little games that I'm playing, little apps that I'm just enjoying? Would you not want to hear that? I don't know. Maybe because I'm an Apple junkie, y'all are afraid I will only mention Apple stuff, which could be true. What about the feedback section? Is it too long? Is it too short? Is it too boring? Do you like it? Do you not like it? I know people who write in and get their stuff read on air, love it. I mean, I do that to other shows, and it always gives me a little, buzz to know that, hey, I got my comment on air, so that's kind of cool. But for the rest of you, do you like it? Don't you? I don't know. I'm not saying that I will change the show completely. I'm not saying that I won't. I will consider everything you write in and tell me about. And if you just want to rant about something, I won't necessarily put that on the air. If you don't want it put on the air, just, shoot me a message in there and say, hey, don't play this on the air. I will be happy to do that, and I will be happy to hear from any of you who have any suggestions, comments, feedback, any of that kind of thing. And hey, another thing I always mention at the end of the show is how you can help the show. If you have an iTunes account, please just pop over in there, give me a quick rating, and if you feel like it, write a review. The ratings help most of all. Reviews help also. I do have a 5-star rating on there, and you are welcome to ruin that if you think the show sucks. But for now, I have a perfect 5-star rating, and I wouldn't mind keeping it, but, hey, do what you got to do. I'm not going to coerce you in any way. But another thing you can do is, if you listen on Stitcher, there's a way to follow over there. On TuneIn Radio, I believe there's also a way to follow over there. I'm not all that familiar with those formats because I don't listen on that myself, but if there is a way to like it or thumbs up it or suggest it or anything like that, please do so. And while you're at it, if you have friends that are in trucking or friends that just have an interest in trucking, point them towards a podcast. Explain how a podcast works, because God knows I have talked to so many drivers. I'll be sitting there talking to them and I'll mention, hey, I do a blog called Trucker Dump, and they go, oh, what? I mean, it's hard to believe that there's anyone in this world who doesn't know what a blog is or even heard of a blog. I might understand if they had never heard of a vlog, but a blog, come on, that's been around for a decade or something, hadn't it? So anyway, there's just a lot of non-techie people out there, and if you explain to them how easy podcasts are, especially when you can just download an app and just click on the one, find something you want, just type in trucking and see what pops up. Type in science, type in education, whatever you're interested in, politics, just type something in and you will find something. And there's so much free stuff in podcasting that I hate to see truckers just ignore it. It's such a wealth of information, and it's so much information. I mean, I used to listen to XM radio all the time. I got rid of it. Don't need it anymore. Just listen to podcasts, and quite honestly, I'm subscribed to so many of them that I can't keep up with all the podcasts. I've had to, I've gotten to the point now where if something in the podcast just doesn't interest me, I just fast forward through it, which is another great thing about podcasts. Can't do that with live radio or live XM radio. So anyway, I have rambled long enough, and I'm starting to sweat my butt off, so let's get on with this thing so I can get it over with and get the air back on. At least open the windows, for Pete's sake. Okay, I am not happy with this title at all, but hey, sometimes when you're a perfectionist, you just have to let things go and get on with it. So I give you 4 reasons truckers get the Hazmat Endorsement. Man, that's lame. I was hammering through a bunch of past episodes of the Trucking Podcast when Buck said something I've heard at least 847 times before. The hazardous materials endorsement just isn't worth it anymore. Okay, now that may not have been his exact quote, let alone the way his voice sounds, but it was something like that. So is that true? Is it worth it to go through the hassle of calling the TSA, finding a fingerprinting location, setting up an appointment, getting your fingers scanned, letting the FBI run your prints and do a background check, pass a written test, and pay $86.50 at the time of this writing, all for the privilege of being able to haul hazardous materials? And then you get to do it all over again every 5 years. Well, first off, let me start by saying that I'm not singling out Buck. His comment is just what spawned the idea for this blog post. I totally respect Buck's opinion and insights into the trucking industry. And the more I listen to the Trucking Podcast, the more I realize how truly ill-informed I am of this industry that I've been a part of for almost 18 years. By the way, I've included a link to the Trucking Podcast. If you truckers aren't listening to it, you should be. Now, I doubt Buck would claim to be an expert in the field, but he's a regular Stephen Hawking compared to me. I mainly chalk that up to the fact that he likes learning about the industry because he actually enjoys trucking. I, on the other hand, like it about as much as I'd enjoy sipping on a literal Bloody Mary. To me, this is just a job. I have no desire to learn more about it than is absolutely necessary. So having said that, I don't think anyone can make a blanket statement about having a hazardous material endorsement. There are just too many different situations to consider. Let's look at a few of the reasons a driver might want to get the hazmat endorsement. 1. Not having a hazmat endorsement might keep you from getting a job. Now, I imagine that the vast majority of current CDL holders studied for and passed the hazmat exam while in truck driving school. I expect the schools have you do this because it makes new drivers more attractive to employers. This, in turn, jacks up the reputation of the truck driving school. Hey, look at us! 100% of our students find jobs within 1 week of graduating. Aren't we awesome? Yeah, maybe you're awesome. Or maybe it's because the industry is so desperate for drivers that they'd hire Helen Keller if she walked through the door. I know back in '97, when all the trucking recruiters were coming to our driving school, every single one of them needed you to have the hazmat endorsement in order to hire you. Now, I doubt that's the case anymore because it just doesn't seem like nearly as many carriers are requiring it. I considered calling a few companies and driving schools to verify my suspicions, but in the end, that would have been like actual research that, quite frankly, I just didn't feel like doing. So my advice to newbies is to get your hazardous materials endorsement when you first get your CDL, even if the school you're attending doesn't require it. As a rookie with no experience, you already have fewer options to choose from. Don't let the best job you have available escape simply because you didn't want to jump through a few hazmat-fueled flaming hoops. Just get it, and if you find you don't need it later, just don't renew it. Or maybe you'll have to. Number 2, the DMV might require you to have the hazmat endorsement. Recently, I found a local job that would let me sleep in my own bed 7 days a week, and it paid more than my over-the-road job. I knew these jobs existed, one had just never popped up in my neck of the woods. Now, that's probably because I live so far out in the sticks that we don't actually have roads. But guess what? The job was pulling fuel tankers. The problem? I didn't have my tanker endorsement. Now, as luck would have it, I talked to the recruiter on a Friday, and I told him I'd have the tanker endorsement on my license by Monday when he read my resume and cover letter. I just so happened to be delivering in Joplin, Missouri just before I went home. So I dropped my trailer at the customer and bobtailed over to the DMV. But guess what? After I passed the written tanker endorsement test, the trooper said, "Do you have your hazmat endorsement? Because you're going to need it to get the tanker endorsement." As Ace Ventura would say, really? Since when? Since recently. Apparently, the great state of Missouri decided that the two endorsements were to be combined. Well, sort of. You can have the hazmat endorsement without the tanker endorsement, but you cannot have the tanker without the hazmat. No idea why, and neither did anyone at the ever-so-friendly and helpful DMV. Call that one a shocker. Even weirder, it doesn't matter if you're going to be hauling milk or flour. If it's in a tanker trailer, you have to possess the hazmat tanker combo endorsement. At least in my screwed-up state anyway. Hey, Missouri, show me some reasoning behind this. Well, as luck would have it, I already had my hazmat endorsement, so I was in the clear. Although the trooper thought they might need a current record of me passing the hazmat test. Bummer. So to avoid waiting in a long DMV line only to be rejected back to the testing room, I sat down for another round of testing. Well, I'm happy to say that I passed with flying colors. Unhappily, that means if I can pass a hazmat test without studying the lick, then I've been driving a truck for way too long. Oh well, it be what it be. The point here is that if I didn't already have my hazmat endorsement, my resume might have been tossed into file 13 before I even had a chance at the job. Before 9/11, this wouldn't have been any big deal. Take the written hazmat test, pay the fee to add it to your license, and be done with it. But now that the TSA have their fingers all up in your junk, it can take up to 30 days to get approved for a hazmat endorsement. I've included a link to the TSA website where you can figure out how to get your hazmat endorsement. All the rules are there. Exactly the process. And for the record, I didn't get the job. I found out afterwards that another driver had been talking to our regional manager with the company for over a year, so he was pretty much a shoo-in. Now, I'm not wishing any ill will on anyone, but... oh, who am I kidding? I hope he's a lazy sack of crap that gets fired in the first month. You've got my number, Mr. Recruiter. Call me. Number 3. You could get more loads with a hazmat endorsement. I've experienced this one numerous times. You see, my company doesn't require us to have a hazmat endorsement, but they sure love the drivers who do. I recall many times getting a call from dispatch asking if I had my hazmat endorsement. Yipper, why? 'Cause we need you to cover for another driver who doesn't have one. Sometimes this even meant extra deadhead miles. Cool. So, great. The hazmat holder gets the worm. Wait, I think I screwed up that idiom. But put yourself in the position of the other driver, the one who doesn't have hazmat. He was all set to take a load. He started his 14-hour clock, and now it's ticking away because he couldn't cover the load. Now, I would say I feel sorry for him, but I'm far too busy driving down the road with his load. Yep, my compassion for humanity never ends. But guess what? There's an even bigger benefit of me having the hazmat endorsement. Number 4. You could get paid more for having a hazmat endorsement. This is the part that I love more than getting a scalp massage from the evil overlord, which I believe I last felt somewhere around the turn of the century. My company pays me 1 cent more per mile for having a hazmat endorsement. But the even more important fact is that this penny pay raise is for all miles run, even if I'm not hauling a hazmat load. And here's the real kicker. I can take off 1 sock and count the number of hazmat loads I pull in any given year. Heck, I could even lose a couple of toes in a freak rhinoceros stampede and still count high enough. And even on those loads, oftentimes the quantity of hazmat is so low that placards aren't even needed. If you don't know what placards are, link in the show notes. Obviously, that's for non-truckers. Now, you still might be thinking that it isn't worth the hassle of getting your hazmat endorsement. Let's do the math. The TSA fee will run you $86.50 at the time of this writing, and let's add on an extra few bucks for gas getting to the appointment, your time wasted, license renewals fee, and etc. So, let's say we're up to $150 now. But let's not forget, this is every 5 years. Now let's figure out how much extra I can make in 5 years by keeping my hazmat endorsement intact. According to my last pay stub of 2014, I made an extra $1,258.84 last year. Now at a penny per mile, I guess that means I drove 125,884 miles. And to think my mother-in-law falls asleep on the 30-minute drive into Walmart. But wait, we've got to compare apples to apples here. The hazmat cost is every 5 years. If I average the same mileage for the next 5 years, I will have made $6,294.20. Let's not forget the 20 cents. So, is it worth it to have your hazmat endorsement anymore? Well, maybe you've got a crystal ball, or you've chopped off the head of a live chicken and you are 100% sure that you won't need your hazmat endorsement in the near future. Or maybe your company doesn't pay you extra for having a hazmat endorsement. If either of these is the case, then by all means, save the $150. But for me, I'm going to harken back to elementary math class with this simple equation. $6,294.20 is greater than $150. And I'm glad I got to say that, because every time I write it, I screw up that little symbol.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
It's time for feedback. Oh, I love this part of the show. Hey, I think I mentioned we would start off with Greg, who sent in an audio comment. And hey, I wanted to straighten something out here. It's just a minor detail that nobody probably really cares about. I doubt either of these guys are going to be laying on their deathbed one day and say, I was the first one to post an audio comment on the Trucker Dump podcast. And I don't know why either of them just turned into an old Italian guy. But Anyway, okay. I believe a couple of episodes ago, Monongahela Misfit wrote in about the loadingspot.com service, which is a great service. I won't go into it, swear to God, this time. But I believe I credited him as being the first to send in an audio comment. That actually was not true. He was the first one that I played on the air, but actually Greg was the first one to send one in. Problem was, he recorded one and it sounded horrible. And I had to email him back and just say, it's just too bad I can't play it. I mean, it was clipping all over the place, just really, really bad. He was very good-spirited about the whole thing. I tried to be as nice as I could. And he actually went out and bought another recorder to try to do it. And actually, it was worse. I felt horrible having to write him back and tell him that it was even worse. But he was cool with it, and I suggested that he not buy anything else, but just try to use a smartphone or even a computer, because even a computer with its crappy little microphone was going to be better than one of these recorders that he had bought. And he actually took my advice. He tried the smartphone. It worked a lot better than those crappy little recorders he had, and it sounded a lot better, but it had a different problem. This time it was actually cutting in and out. It was cutting words off here and there and stuff, and I felt horrible having to write him back and telling him that it was doing that, although the sound quality was better. But you know what? Greg's cool. He didn't care. He just went out and got a tablet. I am amazed at all he's gone through just to get a comment on the Trucker Dump, and I certainly appreciate it. So let's hear what he has to say. You will hear some background noise. I think he was recording this while he maybe was driving down the road. I don't know. There is some background noise. I have filtered some of it, but some of it you just can't get rid of. So let's hear what he has to say, shall we?
Greetings, fellow trucker dumpers. This is Greg, and I'm re-recording this because I guess when I was using my smartphone, which I have now gotten rid of because it was getting really twitchy and crappy, I'm now running a Verizon tablet, and it seems to be working better. But anyway, so this is about some of you super truckers that how shall I put this? Can't quite seem to slow down when you come up on an accident scene. Like at 2 o'clock in the morning last month when I was over in Pennsylvania on eastbound I-80, I guess it was about the 100 or so or high 90s mile marker, and I came across the scene of an accident. Don't know what happened, but there was a big truck sitting there in the ditch up against the hill in the median with his trailer right behind him, but his trailer tandems were sitting over in the right-hand lane.
Ooh,
right across
bummer.
the fog line onto the shoulder. And it had just happened, and there was a bunch of us that had pulled over, and I went and grabbed some triangles, and we're trying to get them put out, and these yahoos wouldn't slow the down. I mean, they're roaring through this accident scene at 60 plus miles an hour, 65, 70, whatever.
Wow.
I mean, some of them were not slowing down. There's debris all over the road, and these guys can't figure out how to slow down, even though we're out there waving flashlights and trying to get them to slow down. Kind of reminds me of watching some of these other drivers here a few weeks ago over there, and saw videos on a few of the trucking pages I follow, like Twisted Truckers and WTF Trucking and whatever. But anyway, they were saw like 3 or 4 different videos of that big pileup over there in Wyoming, and somebody didn't do a very good job of videotaping, but eventually the trucks that were zooming along, going way too fast for conditions, piled up far enough where they were able to be in the shot by whoever was videotaping him, and all you could hear was air brakes coming on, Jake brakes coming on, and then boom, 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 boom. It's one of those, come on guys, turn your radios on. If you see people out there waving flashlights on the side of the road trying to get you to slow down in the middle of the night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, what it was when it happened with me, it's one of those, there might be something ahead that you maybe should kind of like slow down for, you know?
You think?
Okay, well, this was my accident and slow the down rant. So, all right, fellow trucker dumpers, take it easy and truck safe. This is Greg signing off.
Well, Greg, once again, I do appreciate the audio rant. Rants are always welcome, as anyone knows who has ever visited the trucker dump. And again, thanks for going to all the hassle to get this in. You know, sometimes I wonder if people think I'm a super trucker or being a super trucker. I'm not trying to, I don't know what I'm trying to do here, but I'm just trying to say that I admit I do drive a little bit faster than most people on the snow. Now, ice, I don't mess with that crap, but the snow, you know, I don't have a problem going 45 mile an hour if the snow is decent, if it's just a snowpack. Now, I have a rule. If I can't go 45 mile an hour and feel comfortable, I'll pull over, because it's just not worth my time to go any slower than that. But, you know, even with me going 45, I have guys just blow by me, and surprisingly enough, it's usually somebody like FedEx or, just like you mentioned, or UPS, you know, and they're even hauling wiggle wagons. So what the heck is up with that? You know, if anybody's going to wreck, it's going to be those guys. And yet they're in such a hurry. I don't know if their company pushes them that hard or if they pushed themselves that hard, but personally, I would not want to be forced to drive that fast in bad weather. But hey, whatever. They're getting paid more than me too. So I guess it's worth the money for them. Okay, so let's get on with the next one. Who do we have next? Oh yeah. Gotta hear from our dead celebrity. Okay, our dead celebrity is actually a guy named Michael Jackson. Okay, first off, I want to know, Michael, is your last name really Jackson? Is your first name that Michael Jackson? Come on, really? I mean, were you born before him? I don't know, because if you were born after him, then your parents are just cruel, because I can't imagine what your childhood was like. Wow, that would have been horrible. So anyway, he writes in, and I got to tell you, just like last time with, who was that was having so much problems with their dictation software, I think we got the same thing. This was so convoluted. It was hard for me to understand what was going on. We had to write back and forth, so I'm just going to summarize what he was saying. Basically, Michael writes in and he says that he hauls waste products every single day. It sounds like it's a tanker, and you know, it's got and the thing is, he says his truck drives differently every single day because of the liquid, and it's also just weird sometimes. Like he says, let's see if I can find it. Okay, he says the baffles help, but the load will still shift. The liquid moves, so you have an odd load, and every so often it will make the truck pull on a part of the road I drive often. He says, just last week, going down the road, I was coming into a gentle left curve, mindful of my speed, and the truck kept on going more right than normal. Well, I was taken aback. My thinking was to pull real hard on the wheel, but I knew if I did that the truck would overcorrect with the load, and the load could veer left really fast. So I just let out gosh, it's hard to read. He says, so I let out the throttle and just aimed for the far right of the curve and kept a firm pull on the steering wheel. Now that sounds a little scary, that your truck just kind of jumps like that, and sometimes your steering wheel doesn't want to do. I remember one time I had a truck that did something similar to that. I don't remember what it was because it was early in my career, but you'd just be going along and then the wheel would just jerk on you. It was weird, and it was really unnerving. I can imagine it'd be even more unnerving when you're pulling a load of tanker waste, you know. Ugh, it'd be nasty. Anyway, he goes on and says, I'm never surprised how fast things can happen. I'm a safe driver, but you can never say never. He finishes by saying, just another load, the same drive, in the same old way, but it's very sobering to get caught as to be in a curve on the road and thinking, wow, I was driving okay, but not as well as I should have, apparently. Well, Michael, I'm sorry that your truck is acting weird on you, and I hope that you have that looked at in the shop, for Pete's sake. You don't want to have a wreck. That would be bad. Well, Michael, I've actually never driven a tanker, so I don't know what you're experiencing here. If I had got that job, like I mentioned in the blog post, I would be driving a tanker right now, and I would be happy to do it. But, you know, I know there's a change that you really have to be a lot more careful and, you know, really take those exit ramps a lot slower than you normally would, and all kinds of weird stuff like that. Kind of glad I'm not doing it, but at the same time, I would be happy to drive a tanker if I could be sleeping in my own bed every night. So, hey, Michael, thanks for writing in. Hope next time your dictation software works a little bit better. And lastly, we're going to finish up with Sam, who writes in, and he was probably actually writing because there's punctuation and everything. Thank you, Sam. He writes in, says, hello, I've been meaning to email you for weeks now. I really enjoyed your last podcast and intend to listen to your previous stuff as I have time. Well, thanks, Sam. I always appreciate that. Going back is kind of I don't know if it's punishment or what it is, but you're welcome to it. He goes on, I think it's pretty cool that a truck driver that's over the road takes time to do a podcast. I myself have 19 years as a driver and an owner-operator. I've been off the over-the-road side of things since 2007, but I've run locally in the oil field and now haul crude oil. If it were not for my youngest ones, I'd still be out pounding pavement, as I do miss it, and I certainly miss running to California to see my family. That being said, when you have time to do your next show, I look forward to listening. As far as complacency goes, I think it's real important for us not to let our day become so automatic, and we are all susceptible to it. Regardless of what aspect of trucking a person is in, I think this can happen. Important to stay sharp. I also enjoyed the Bible verse you threw out in your last show. God is good. Well, yes, he is. And Sam finishes up by signing off by saying, speed safely. Well, Sam, speed safely? I love that. Although I'm now that trucker that doesn't speed at all. Driver who so many are pissed at for doing 55 in a 55 mile an hour zone because, you know, heaven forbid, that's just crazy. I wasn't always this way, but I am now. I'm glad you're enjoying the podcast and even more overjoyed to hear you going back to tackle all the back issues. I'm thinking there should be a name for guys like you. I came up with trucker dumpsters, and miraculously enough, Greg mentioned that very name in his audio comments, so hey, maybe there's something to that. But how would I know who fits into this elite group, these trucker dumpsters? It's not like truckers never lie or anything. You know, I could do a trucker dump pop quiz, I guess. That ought to do it. You know, I could ask people about back episodes so I can make sure they actually went back and listened to episode 1. Hey, what was it about? Do you remember? Nobody bother. Nobody cares that much. Now, about the podcast. You know the part where you said that doing the over the road is the real problem? That is certainly the problem. If I had a local job or an even remotely steady schedule, I could slam out a podcast every week like Buck and Don over at the Trucking Podcast do. But instead, you guys get one whenever I can manage it. Now, I know most people wouldn't even bother with a podcast that doesn't come out on a regular schedule. But I think most of my listeners realize that it isn't easy to maintain any sort of schedule out here on the road. And not to mention, there's sometimes free Wi-Fi and Netflix. Another thing that makes it easier for guys like Buck and Don over at the Trucking Podcast is that there are 2 of them. They often joke about not doing any show preparation at all, yet they still manage to carry on a conversation for a full hour. Now, I would love to do a show like that, but I just can't imagine how much of a logistical nightmare it would be to try to coordinate a Skype call with someone every week. I mean, Buck and Don, they sit down in a garage together, and they're both local drivers. And you know, besides the logistics, it's hard enough just to be lucky enough to be parked in a quiet place when it's time to record. I just can't see all that coming together. The Skype call and the perfect timing where you're at a truck stop where it's quiet. I just don't see that it's ever going to happen. So instead, you just get little old me. In addition, if I don't write a blog post, which usually takes me about 4 to 6 hours due to my sick tendency towards perfection, I have nothing to podcast about. When I finally get the blog post written, I need to sort through the latest feedback from listeners to decide what goes on the show and in what order. Then I need to find a couple of hours to record it when I've got some quiet. Or should I say relative quiet. That's usually about the best I can get. Today was a freaking nightmare. Really bad. But I'm not even done after that. I still have to edit the show, which takes another 2 to 4 hours, mainly because I can't speak in coherent sentences. Write up the show notes with clickable links, upload everything, and send out the notification email to those who subscribe via email. Okay, I'm just whining now. I know I've done this kind of whining before, so I will just shut up. I guess podcasting is kind of like writing. Most novelists say they don't like writing, but they enjoy having written. If that makes sense. It does make perfect sense to me. I do enjoy the process of recording and doing the podcast somewhat once I get started, but man, it's tough getting started. Now, if I was lucky enough to just sit down and hit a record button and record a conversation with someone else, I don't think I'd even dread that at all. But I do love it when I see a new Trucker Dump pop up in my Instacast app, which is my favorite podcast app, by the way. So, back to you. Enough about me, for Pete's sake. You say you've worked in the oil fields, huh? That's a topic I've been interested in ever since I drove through western North Dakota last year. I've been wanting to do a podcast about it, but I really don't know enough to do one. Stay tuned there, man. I may be hitting you up one day to learn more about it. Great. Now I've just forced you to change your email address. As for running local, I don't blame you at all for staying close to home with the young ones around. Once they hit their teens, though, they'll be spending more time with their friends than they are the family. At least that's how it is with my nephews, anyway. I don't see them nearly as often as I used to. Now, maybe you can hit the road again somewhere down the road. If that's what you want, I hope you get it. I want what you have now, but I'm wondering if there will be still a part of me that itches for the road every now and then when I'm stuck doing a 9-to-5er. And we had one more back and forth to finish this sucker out today. He wrote me back and said, "Hey, Todd, I really enjoy the 15 seconds of randomness. I really think you should quit trucking and pursue a singing career." No, please don't do that, he says. Actually, if you don't know what that was, I put out a little test post. I was having trouble with my feed, and I just wanted to see if one would post correctly, and I did a little bit of singing in it. It was about 15 seconds, and it was just messing around. I thought it was kind of funny once I went back and listened to it, but I didn't mean it to be that way in the first place. But anyway, he goes on and says, "I found the last show entertaining and funny. As far as you doing the speed limit, buddy, that's just fine with me. I'd rather have you do the speed limit than 55 and a 65 across Highway 54 in my home state of Kansas, causing a 1 or 2 mile backup. Quite honestly, that totally trumps safety. There's nothing safe about a truck that can't do the speed limit on a 2-lane road. Interstate is another story. Drive as slow as you want to." And Sam finishes up by leaving me his number in case I ever want to call him about the oil field industry. So that's cool. I'm going to have to do that one day when I finally figure out and get the balls to do interviews. Maybe I won't. I've been thinking I want to expand in interviews. I mentioned this before. So, maybe I don't just want to call him and find out about it. It'd be much more interesting just to talk to him for an hour like Buck and Don do. Can you tell I'm a bit jealous of Buck and Don? I guess I am. So anyway, Sam, I really don't know what you're talking about. I think I could quit my job and become a singer, instantly. Okay, maybe not. But hey, I actually did used to sing. Not near as good as I used to be. I could still hit a lot of the high notes, but I just don't have it anymore. I don't have the desire either. If you're ever interested in some of my singing, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to it. If you guys haven't heard me back in my 20s singing in my band, do some Led Zeppelin, man. I'll put up a link for you. Pardon the cussing. I did a lot of cussing back then, and I do not curse anymore. So, sorry about that, but hey, it goes with the video. Can't help that. I didn't put the video up, or I'd have cut all that crap out. So, anyway, as for going under the speed limit, I totally agree. I completely understand an owner-operator going under the speed limit on the interstate to save fuel. As for the company drivers, I doubt there's one driver out there who goes under the speed limit to save fuel for their company. But who knows? I've been wrong before. But like you, the back roads are where I have a problem with slowpokes. Since my truck maxes out at 64 mile an hour, I have a hard time finding a place to pass an owner-operator going 62. Heck, even if he's only going 55, it still never feels very safe to pass. For me, it's even worse now than it used to be. My company did some kind of an upgrade to my truck and it screwed up my speed. The result is that I will only go 62 when I have my foot in it. When I want to go 64, I have to set the cruise control at 62 and hold the Excel button down on my steering wheel until I hit 64. Even worse, that often doesn't react as quickly as it should. I'm getting used to it now, but in the beginning I'd have the cruise control on 64, and out of habit I'd put my foot in the floor when I passed someone. But when I did, I'd slow down 2 miles an hour. What the heck? Oh well, our new trucks have those new battery-powered APUs on them, and I've got my eye on one of them, because they've got AC. Mine doesn't. All I have is a bunk heater in this thing. Well, I'll be vying for one of those when it gets closer to summer. Hadn't been too bad so far. And I hear those new trucks don't have that wonky speed thing either, so that's awesome. I do appreciate your offer to help me with the podcast on oilfield stuff, and I appreciate you writing in, Sam. Hope you enjoy the past episodes, and as you listen to them, send in any questions or feedback or insights you have that I may have missed, because God knows I know I missed a lot of stuff. So hey, I believe we are done for the day. I've already pleaded with you guys to send in audio comments. I pleaded with you guys to do reviews and all that stuff. So what's left? Well, I guess there's nothing really left to do except for getting some killer music started. Hey, I should mention something about that. Actually, I've been meaning to mention it. Did you know that the intro and the outro music are available for free? Yeah, both of them are from a band called Walking on Einstein. I went to high school with the drummer, whose name is Shan Matthews, and the bass player, whose name is Ron White. I went to high school with both of those guys. They're both really cool, and they agreed to let me use the music on free of charge on the podcast, and they also agreed to let people download those 2 songs for free. So if you want the full versions of the song and hear what the whole song sounds like, head on over to abouttruckdriving.com and click on the free stuff link. It's in that. It's on that page. So hey, free music. And hey, once again, don't forget to sign up and register to win the free Trucker Country CD by Eric McMahon. Again, send me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com with the subject line Trucker Music. Do it and do it now. Now let's kick into some killer guitar. So what do you think? Do you still think it isn't worth it to get your Hazmat endorsement? If you're being stubborn, write or send an audio comment in explaining why you refuse to get your Hazmat endorsement. As always, you can write your comments on abouttruckdriving.com by searching for TD108 in the search bar. Or you can be like most people and send me an email to truckerdump@gmail.com. The only social media I'm on with any consistency is Twitter, where I'm at Todd McCann. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. Lastly, if you got a second, please write a review where you get your podcasts. Well, I guess I blabbed long enough. Thanks for listening to said blabber. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way.
Dog doesn't know what he's doing.